Okay, so we left off with this funnel here, which represents the degree of thoroughness you might have when conducting your hazard analysis. Let's go through a couple examples of these different steps in the funnel. So the first one is the Appendix 1 guidance by FDA. As you can see here, there's a list of categories or products by category that includes storage conditions. And as you can see here, they've identified hazards that they associate with these categories, and they give some example products on the right-hand side. So cheese not soft, associated with pathogenic E. coli, salmonella, listeria, and Staph aureus. Now there are like 200 pages plus of this guidance, I believe. And so it's quite lengthy. There are 3 tables, one for biological hazards, one for chemical, and one for processing hazards. Next is an example of a industry guidance by FDA made specifically for fresh fruits and vegetables in this case. But there are many of these. I provide a list of them on our blog post that relate to spices, dairy, seafood, and so on. Here's an example of industry best practices. So this happens to be by the California Board of Almonds. So if you are an almond processor, you have it's a commodity that's fairly mainstream, and so resources have been made available to the industry. So if you are a product that's fairly mainstream, I'm sure there's some resources out there that you can use. Next is if you're going to look into recall notifications online that might involve your product. I personally like using Google search operators for that. You can check our blog to see how you can use Google search operators to navigate the FDA website. It's a little more efficient. Next is import alerts. You can actually search by industry group. So I love that. You can also look by country in a number of other ways. A link to this is in our blog post. Next is an example of how you might use an extension. So Penn State's prolific. University Extension of Florida, also really great. University of Florida's extension is great. Anyhow, good resources. Now, for you who have the technical background to use things like iRisk, go ahead. It may be a little bit overkill, but you could make use of it. If you're looking for something pared down where a lot of the footwork's been done for you, you should consult the FDA's methodological approach to developing a risk ranking model for food tracing, where they sorted through all the different tools available to them, models, one of which was the iRisk, which was a quantitative risk assessment model. They decided to go with a semi-quantitative risk scoring model, and this is their criteria. Let me move myself here, where they pick from 7 points of criteria, and then from there, they assigned a score to each one. So 1 being low and 9 being high. And as you can see over here, they have the pair score. Now, they also wrapped up all of these pair scores. So scores pairing the commodity with the specific hazard. And then they created a commodity score. As you can see here, cheese ranks at the top. Now, don't rely just on the food traceability list, because there may be products that are not included on the food traceability list that in your hazard analysis you may determine require preventive control. So even though this determines high risk, just be aware that your products may not be on here, and that's not a reason to simply ignore them. Okay, next is customizing matrices. So I like this one, except for the fact that it excludes criteria for what it means to be common, known, could occur. Now, the Preventive Controls for Human Food Working Group for FSPCA did not come up with a risk matrix. They avoided it. But the Working Group for Animal Food did create a matrix. And what's lovely about it is they provide, sorry for the resolution here, but they provide criteria for probability and severity. Just make sure that this is consistent with what you consider to be appropriate for low, medium, and high. Here you can see a more conservative risk matrix where they decided the critical area was going to be a combination of low and high severity and probabilities. So make sure you're choosing the matrix that's best fit for your commodity type and industry. Next is citing work. I rarely see in hazard analyses people citing their work, which is mind-boggling to me, because for most of us that went through high school, we learned how to create a bibliography. So let's do it here. Now, here you can see I've evaluated butter. In this case, it's for FSVP. I've bundled the hazards that I'm concerned about. I've even identified why I think they might be there. In this case, introduced by raw milk, recontaminated due to insanitary manufacturing environment. And then I have my probability. Now, in probability and severity, I make my citations 1 and 2. So as you can see here in my bibliography, I have 1 and 2 cited. And so I'm substantiating my decision making. Okay, just remember to download those sources so you can preserve them. And that's it. Thanks so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the video.